Hi, welcome everyone. This is Julie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. We're just seeing that there's about half of the group on so far, so we're just going to give it a couple more minutes and make sure that everyone gets a chance to log in, and then we'll get started. So this is Julie Baker again. Just wanted to let you know we're going to get started in a couple minutes. Just waiting for a handful more people to jump on. It's 11:01, so we'll probably give it to about 11:03. Make sure everyone's on. It looks like we've got we're getting closer, so we'll wait till everybody's signed on. All right, well, I think we should get started. So my name is Julie Baker. I'm the Executive Director of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. And welcome to our Arts Advocacy training. Joining us on the line is Sophia Klatsker. Sophia, want to say hi?
Hi, good morning.
And we'll go back and forth doing this presentation. We anticipate it should take about an hour. There's time for you guys to ask questions towards the end. And also just to let you know that this deck is available on our website under the Advocate link. And then you should have also received some handouts, 10 reasons to support the arts in California. So it's actually customized with some statistics specifically for California, our ways to engage document, and our poster as well. So, and feel free afterwards if you have any questions to please email us. That contact information you should have already received, and it's also at the end of this training. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we just did our welcome. We're going to go straight into advocacy, a little bit about who we are. So what I wanted to just say first is that we are gearing this advocacy training in the hopes that you will join us on April 23rd in Sacramento for Arts, Culture, Creativity Advocacy Day. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that. There's also the whole month long of actions for Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, which we'll shorten to ACCM. And this training is geared to get you involved in ACCM and to join us on the 23rd. When we do these in person, we can do a little bit more specifics to your local community and advocacy on that level. And if that's something you're interested in us working with you on, you can email us and we'd be happy to speak to you more about that. What wanted to just talk about first is our mission. I can't see the whole slide. So sorry, we're just a little Here we go. So this is the mission for Californians for the Arts. We are a 501c3, a nonprofit organization. We also have a partner organization, California Arts Advocates, and that's our 501c4, where we actually have a lobbyist, an awesome lobbyist here in Sacramento, Jason Schmelzer of Shaw, Yoder, Antwi. Californians for the Arts mission is to increase public awareness of the importance of the arts, to ensure that the arts are an ongoing part of the public dialogue, and encourage Californians to care about the arts as a critical component of their own lives and the lives of their communities. Our vision is to build a sustainable and vibrant California using arts and creativity as the driver for social change and wellness. So really looking at it as arts as a solution and the creativity sector as a solution to some of the social issues that we face, that we create impact both in the economy, in our lives, and in social issues that our state faces, from everything from homelessness to housing and transportation, corrections, veterans, wellness. There's all sorts of ways that the arts and the creative sector impacts, and that's one of the main visions for us in terms of how we speak to our legislators and what we do to make that case for the arts and why it needs to receive public funding on the national, state, and local levels. Our hope is to see that the arts funding increases to historic levels. We are not there still. It was actually higher back in the 90s than it is today for public funding for the arts. We want to see that arts are actually accessible for all Californians. That, again, the more we increase the public funding, the more access everyone in California has to arts programs through public funding. We are building a campaign for California to be perceived as the leading state of creativity. We believe California is the state of the arts. We work on and strategize, and this is sort of some of how we do it more than the vision, but the policy development for the arts, culture, and creativity sector. We want to demonstrate solutions to socioeconomic issues, and we want to always promote to value the sector with equitable pay and cultural equity. Let me tell you a little bit about where we are right now in terms of funding for the arts and what Californians for the Arts, as your statewide arts advocacy organization, has been doing for all these years. So there was a sort of a sad time in California when the arts were being very underfunded. In fact, they were only at $1 million for about 10 years, you'll see in the graph. And that was only because that was the way that we would get NEA matched funding. Over the last 6 years in particular, Californians for the Arts and with California Arts Advocates lobbyists, we've been walking the halls and making sure that we see that funding increase as we continue to make our case on why the arts should be funded and the impact that we make. As you'll see, our strategy over the last 5 years has been to build it both as a permanent funding that gets allocated in the budget, as well as sometimes we would receive one-time funding. And that's what happened in 2018. Governor Brown, as he was leaving his tenure as governor, he allocated an $8.8 million in one-time funding increase for the California Arts Council. And let me just step back for a second and just remind everyone that the California Arts Council is the state arts agency. That is how the public funding for the arts happens in California. And then they send out their funding through grants, and some of that is through their partnerships with state local partners and statewide regional networks. There are 58 counties in California, and we currently have 54 state local partners. Those are essentially the boots on the ground arts councils. And some of them do redistribute grant funds, some of them provide programs in their community to support artists and other arts organizations, sort of a wide variety. But they are the way that we can also make sure that the arts are being delivered in rural communities. Californians for the Arts is a statewide regional network. As you can see, our goal is to serve the entire state and provide services for artists, arts organizations to watch and protect legislation that affects artists and arts organizations, and to increase funding and advocacy for the arts. One of the exciting things this year, going back to the graph, has been in January, our new governor, Newsom, allocated $10 million in permanent funding to the Public Arts Agency in his budget. That has not yet passed. That's something that we are advocating for on Advocacy Day, and making sure that that budget is, that increase is actually made permanent. And that's why you see now the graph has gone to all purple on the right-hand side. That is projected. So that would get us to about $26 million in total funding, permanent funding. That does not include the Arts and Corrections program that California Arts Council delivers, which is about $8 million, as well as some funding from the NEA and the license plates programs, will get us to about $38 million in all funds. We're still not yet at the median for states, which is about $1.10 per capita per person for arts funding. We, even with this increase, would still be under $1, just at 99 cents. So although we're grateful for this proactive budget allocation by our governor, we'd like to still see funding increase so we can continue to be the leading state of creativity and see the arts being accessible for everyone in California. Some of the areas that we advocate for in terms of, we have a wonderful advocacy committee led by Sophia Klatzker, who's here on the phone, and she's the former executive director for Arts for LA. And what we do when there are areas of advocacy that are brought to our attention, things that we need to decide if we are going to be proactive or in some cases reactive in terms of legislation or policy development, these are the buckets that they fall into. So again, we look for increased and permanent funding for the arts, publicly supported arts education. We partner with California Alliance of Arts Educators and Create California, and they'll be listed as some of the resources that you'll see at the end of this presentation. And we strongly encourage you, if arts education is something that is really important and meaningful to you in your own community and personal lives, and something you want to advocate for, that you also look to them for their resources. On Arts Advocacy Day, we will have specific information on arts ed, what the picture looks like for the state of California, and what we're specifically advocating for in this year's overall legislation. We also advocate for a strong creative economy. So if there are things that can help support a strong creative economy, again, in terms of legislation or funding, ways to protect artists and arts organizations, we are going to be bringing that to our advocacy committee and determining whether or not that is something we will put our efforts towards. We advocate for cultural equity across California, and we also advocate that arts are perceived as a tool for social change. There's a wonderful resource on the Americans for the Arts website called the Social Impact Explorer, and I encourage you to take a look at that. That's a way that you can actually buy any kind of issue, like I mentioned, transportation. You can click on that and it will talk specifically about, on a national scale, how the arts have made a difference in all the different social areas. I want to get now into Advocacy 101. I'm going to bring that in. Sophia Klatzker, our wonderful expert on identifying what is some of the differences between advocacy and lobbying, and some of the basics of advocacy. So take it away, Sophia.
Thanks, Julie. It is such a pleasure to be here. And like Julie said, there's sometimes a little bit of confusion about what is advocacy, what makes it lobbying, when does that happen, and what are you allowed to do, especially if you're part of a nonprofit. So we're going to just talk about that for a few minutes before we go into what's going to happen in Sacramento on the 23rd of April. So very briefly, I mean, what Julie just said I think is really important. When we think about Californians for the Arts, we're thinking about these 5 buckets: arts funding, arts education, creative economy, equity, social change. I kind of did a shorthand on those. Inside that, advocacy would be public support for or a recommendation of a particular cause or policy. So inside any of those 5 areas, we could have specific recommendations, and we in fact do. And so Julie will talk about that in a second. And so the thing is that advocacy can take many forms. In simple terms, it means making the case for your cause or mission. When we talk about advocacy for nonprofits, we usually mean making the case in a way that will change public policy to help our cause. And this means reaching audiences in a position to make those changes, both your policymakers and your grassroots leaders. Advocacy can be any one of a number of things, from research and public education to lobbying elected officials and voter engagement. And these activities are especially important when you want to make sure that underrepresented and vulnerable communities have a voice in decisions that affect them. So I think it's really important to say that when we talk about advocacy and lobbying, sometimes there's a little bit of a fear that you as a nonprofit can't do that. And so I will just say, and we're going to talk about what the difference is here in a second, but it's really important when I say why advocacy. Every nonprofit can and should get involved in advocacy to help advance their mission. And everyone who is working towards an arts and cultural mission, if it's not us, then no one else will represent our interests. Advocacy shapes the public debate about issues that affect us, and it's the number one way that we can focus attention on our issues and the things we care about and bring about real change for the people that we serve. With the right tools and information, you can really make this work well. So the next slide is about this difference between advocacy and lobbying. We have, and this is a funny chart because it says that education is larger and advocacy is within it. And truly, when I think about advocacy, yes, these are kind of the scaffolded elements, but advocacy itself includes education and it includes lobbying. So it's a bigger umbrella, but it also is a more directed action. So it's kind of both and. In this case, what we see is that educating is around increasing understanding. And so usually what this means, so this is still not lobbying. When you provide nonpartisan analysis, a study or research that presents all sides of an issue, that is a way that you're educating the people around you about the things that we know about best. And that is still considered an element of advocacy, but that is the education element. When we respond to a written request for assistance from policymakers or other legislative bodies, that is still advocacy as an educational element. We're supplementing, we're providing basic information, we're not lobbying. When we challenge or support legislative proposals that would change organizations' rights or their right to exist, we're representing our interests, we're not lobbying for a specific bill. And that's very nuanced, actually, and I'll talk about really lobbying here in a second. But when we examine and discuss broad social, economic, and similar problems, that also is a part of educating. And so educating is this larger bubble of increasing understanding. When we advocate, we express support for our sector issues specifically. And that, again, you can see those go hand in hand. When lobbying takes place, it's when we attempt to shape a vote. And direct lobbying is when we communicate with legislators and we express a view about a specific legislation. And grassroots lobbying is when we communicate with the public and express a view about specific legislation that includes a call to action. And then here in California, when we have propositions on a ballot, the legislator becomes the voter. And so that is the grassroots lobbying, and direct lobbying is to the legislator, who is the sitting elected official. There's something, if you're part of a C3, you can get very deep into the weeds on this, on how much you can do based on the size of your budget. But I think the important thing to say out loud is you can and you should. It is totally well within your rights. If it's not you, who else will do it? There's a thing called the H election. We can talk about that. We have it listed on our website. But what's really important when we talk about advocacy and our role in lobbying is that we must remain nonpartisan. We must observe those financial limits of a percentage of the budget. It's very small when you finally do the calculations. Most everyone will be well within it. We cannot engage with any specific targeted political campaign, but we can with a political issue, with a bill or a kind of a petition towards a change in a policy. We cannot rank, rate, or endorse candidates. And really, endorsing a candidate is the biggest problem that you can have. Just don't do it. and you have to include equal coverage of all candidates. So you're allowed to, if you're a nonprofit, you're allowed to survey where a candidate lies with where they are with how they think of an issue. But you have to ask them a broad range of questions, and then you have to list every single candidate's responses. So it's not ranking it, and you're not rating it, you're just saying what they said, and you're making sure that everyone is represented. So hopefully that's a little clearer in terms of advocacy, education, and lobbying. The next part that I think is really important to say is that when we engage with our policymakers and political officials, that one of the best things that we can do is make sure that we have existing relationships that are really respectful and that have been established over time. And part of that first chart that Julie showed of the increase in budget over time is that we have successfully been using relationships that we have and engaging policymakers over time to have them understand the benefit and see how arts and culture is a part of the interests of their constituents. So when we talk about building those relationships, locally, that's any of your local elected officials, your mayors, your city councils, your supervisors, your school boards, other commissions and councils. At the state, that's Assembly and Senate, as well as the governor's office, and also congressional representatives, House and Senate, when we talk about federal. And of course, you have the presidential office as well. When we look at times that we build these relationships, we usually are doing it around budget seasons. And so you also want to start to have a finger on the pulse of who sits on which committees. And if you can have a sense of where the budget committee or the finance committee is and whose representatives are on it, suddenly building that relationship well in advance of any kind of budgetary vote makes it so that you've built their understanding. Hopefully, they've had a personal experience. They've gone and seen the impact of our work, and they become the ideal situation when you're building and cultivating these relationships is that the policymaker becomes the advocate for their peers when they are making a vote. That's when you are most successful. And in California, we've been really good at that. I think the other thing that we're seeing is that we cannot remain a sector unto ourselves, and that we are more powerful when we collaborate with other issues and sectors. We've seen this in San Francisco in the Bay Area when there was the coalition around the homelessness initiative, and we've seen it around the conversation around creative economy. And engaging business and community leaders to use their influence, of course, is always a very powerful way, because at the end of the day, whether we want it to or not, those who are investing in the campaigns because we have such short-term limits that all of our policymakers are always running for office. And there is an element of what is the role of business and community leaders who have a relationship with those people who are running. I think this note at the very bottom is really important. Federal legislation can affect state and local government, but no level of government is more important than another. I would say it's not more important, but it is easier to see fast change at the local level because it can be enacted more quickly and you can see it in a smaller footprint. And so sometimes starting locally is a really good way to test an idea before you bring it to scale at state or national roles. I think that's where I'm going to stop for right now. Julie, I think you're next to talk about what's going to happen in Sacramento.
That's right. Thank you so much, Sophia. We're so lucky to have such an amazing advocate and person who really understands the intricacies of advocacy and lobbying on our board and as a part of Californians for the Arts. So thank you, Sophia. And in the great way that we're doing this, Sophia's in Southern California and I'm in Northern California. So we truly spread across the whole state. So yes, so a lot of this is hopefully gearing you up and getting you engaged and excited to participate in Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, which will be the entire month of April. And we will then convene in Sacramento on Tuesday, April 23rd, beginning at 9 a.m. And I'm going to go into actually the specific schedule for that day. So starting at 9 a.m., we are going to have Senator Ben Allen from Santa Monica, and Assemblymember Kansen Chu will be welcoming us that day in the morning. We'll be meeting on the south side of the Capitol on the steps there. We will also start with a land recognition, and then we'll go into Senator Allen and Assemblymember Chu. There is a proclamation that is happening right now for statewide that the two of them are presenting for us for April to be Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. This is going to be annual, so mark April 2020 and beyond as Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. Then in the rest of the morning session, we'll stay outside. We'll actually have ways that you can make art. We'll have a silkscreen poster assemblage, and we'll have a number of different speakers. We are inviting legislators as well as the governor's office to come down and share their arts impact story. And that's really simply can be 3 to 5 minutes long, just telling how the arts have made an impact or difference in their lives. It's pretty hard to find someone who can't share a story along those lines, and I've been doing that as I've been doing my own legislative meetings, and we'll be sharing those on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, so you can get a sense of what those look like. And it's very easy to take your smartphone. We recommend you hold it horizontally and just ask people to share their arts impact stories. We'll also have a wonderful presentation from Randy Cohen, who is the arts data guy from Americans for the Arts. There's no one who can spin a story with data that is more compelling than Randy Cohen. So he'll be there towards the end of the morning to get us all excited and geared up for our legislative visits in the afternoon. We will also, if you have friends or colleagues who want to join us but are not able to attend any of the trainings, that's okay. We can do some on-site getting ready for your visits. You'll also have a captain for your delegation. We just need them to let us know that they're coming so we can assign them. And there is a button on the website that says RSVP Advocacy Day. If you're thinking you're coming and have yet to do that, please do that. And that's at CALIFORNIANSforthearts.org. We also invite you, if you've got an arts impact story to tell, or you are a performer or know of performers, we invite you to also participate, and you can send an email to ACCM@CALIFORNIANSforthearts.org and let us know what you'd like to share that morning. We're also going to have students coming up. We'll have some young thespians, as well as some kids that are in some music programs and sharing their arts impact story. We hope for it to be an inspiring and engaging morning, and we also hope to see a lot of legislators and hopefully even the governor and the first partner come down and share their arts impact story. We will then have lunch served. We're working out the details of that right now, but there'll be some sort of lunch there so everyone stays together. And then we'll do visits to our legislative offices, our legislators' offices. And just so you know, we are arranging those for you. If you have a strong relationship because you're a good advocate and you have a strong relationship with your legislator, just let us know that, and that if you're going to be reaching out to them as well, that's totally fine. We just want to look coordinated. It's very, very important. And we will give you what we're calling a cheat sheet and a leave behind for your legislator that will outline issues that we are advocating for. And I'll get into those in a little bit more detail coming up soon, so that you will be completely prepared as well as be able to provide something for them when they are reviewing it later on. I also want to mention, and we'll get into more of the basics of a delegate visit, but it is often very likely that you will be meeting with a staffer instead of the legislator themselves. And that's often because they are in meetings, in particular in April. There's a lot of hearings and meetings happening as the budget is getting determined and other legislation is getting reviewed. But staffers are critical to the delivery of information. They are trusted by your legislator or the legislators. So it's not something to disregard in terms of the impact of meeting with a staffer. And also, you will go to more than just one meeting. You will not just go to the office that is your direct representative. You will also go to others so that we can hopefully try and reach as many legislative offices that day as possible. There are 120 that we have to try and facilitate. And then we will have a reception, and that is free to attend with a no-host bar, and that will be at the Sheraton Grand from 5 to 7 p.m. And again, there is a link on our website to RSVP for that as well, so we can get a sense of how many people will be attending. But we'd love for you to show up on April 23rd. When we're talking about articulating the value of the arts, we can look at it in 4 different impact clusters. And these are just ways that you can start to think about how do you frame your case for the arts. There is the individual enrichment cluster, the community enrichment, economic advancement, and educational advancement. So think about it, and you can think about it in those 4 terms and those 4 buckets. I think it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of what that means. There is a lot of data out there, and we are happy to provide you with specific data. We can give you specific data on how many jobs are created by the creative economy within your legislator's district, so you can email us and ask us for that. We can also give you specific data through Create California on what is the status of arts education in your community. Is it being delivered in the way it should be? If it's not, what do the stats look like? And this is really great when you're going to meet with a legislator to give them that direct information. We can also tell them how much is being funded in terms of public funding, both from the NEA and through the CAC, the California Arts Council, within their district. So we can drill down as much as you would like, and we can provide that for you. This is our policy agenda specifically for Advocacy Day. We are going to be meeting with our legislators and their staffers at times, and they'll say, well, what is that you want to talk about today? And these are the areas. So we want them to support Governor Newsom's permanent funding increase of $10 million to the California Arts Council in the 2019 budget. Those subcommittee hearings are happening. Actually, one is tomorrow that I will be attending. There is potential that we might actually see the legislators say that we want more than $10 million. That is potential. We might hear some who say it should be less, and there are times when there have been when legislators say we need to cut funding because we need to balance the budget. We don't anticipate that this year, but why it's important to always be there, as Sophia was mentioning, in terms of having those relationships, is that we want to make our case so when and if those days come when a red line, a red pen has to be taken to the budget, the arts are not seen as something that is unnecessary and therefore can be slashed from the budget. We want to make our case strong and effectively when the times are good, as well as when, and so when times are not so good, we are not on the chopping block. We want to always recommend continued and increased permanent funding for the arts. So our specific recommendation is to support Newsom's increase. If it changes by April 23rd in terms of maybe a legislator's put forth something differently, and if it's larger, we will have that information for you. We want to make sure that, again, arts are valued, arts, culture, and creativity are valued as solutions to pressing societal issues. And again, we'll give you specifics on that. So, but if you're someone who has seen the impact, let's say you work in a program that is for arts and veterans, or you work in a program in inside of one of the 35 prisons in California that's delivering arts and corrections programs, or you've seen a difference in terms of mental health, or you've seen a difference in terms of arts education, and it means that kids are actually staying in school, or you've seen a symphony program on the streets that's maybe changed a homeless person's life around, or you have statistics, or you've seen the difference that museums make and access to museums make in your community or in our state. These are some of the things that you can talk about how the arts, culture, and creativity sector has made a difference to solve some of our societal issues, or at least aid in solving some of our societal issues. We want to ensure that all students have access to arts education and the education code is enforced. And again, we are partnering, we're really pleased to have some wonderful partners with us at Arts Advocacy Day. So we have, for example, Create California and the California Association of Arts Educators. So we'll be getting really wonderful data and information from them so that you will have that in hand. We are partnering with California Association of Museums, and I see Celeste DeWald, who is their executive director, is on our call today, so welcome, Celeste. And we're also partnering with the Association of California Symphony Orchestras, and I see their executive director, Sarah Weber's, on our call as well today. So if that's those specific drill down areas are important to you, we'll have more information for you there as well. We want to look at programs that provide for well-rounded early childhood resources to include arts and creativity. We have pending legislation right now that is very exciting for that Senator Henry Stern has put forth for a youth poet laureate bill, and that would actually be the youth poet laureate between the ages of 13 and 19 would be appointed by the governor, would be given a stipend of $10,000 over 2 years to travel the state, read their poems, and to spread the joy and impact of the literary arts. That's something that Californians for the Arts is absolutely supporting. In fact, we sent out an action item recently asking you to send a letter of support to Senator Henry Stern's office, and we hope to, we will be asking for that on Arts Advocacy Day, that the legislator votes in favor of that. We also have, in the last several years, we have a pilot program for the Cultural Districts program. There are 14 cultural districts currently designated in California. This was actually a bill that was put forth by Assemblymember Bloom, and we are advocating that they continue to support that legislation and to build the programs and the financial support for the cultural districts so we can increase the effectiveness of those programs. Then finally, we are also asking to support the museum grant program and administered by the California Cultural and Historical Endowment. And that's something that Celeste from California Association of Museums will be giving us more information, and you will have more to be able to talk about that when you're in your meetings. So this is our policy. That was our policy agenda. And again, what you're going to do that day is you're going to educate your representatives and their staffers about the arts and culture programs that benefit California. And again, you'll have that list in front of you with very specific facts as well. You're going to share your own arts impact stories. So again, you know, how has that made a difference to you? How have you seen it impact your community, individuals? How has it changed people's lives? How has it made a difference? How has it changed the economy within your community? Those are the stories we want you to tell. And then we're going to connect, advocate, and mobilize on that day. We really want to build our political strength as arts supporters so that, again, when and if funding levels or we see an economy shift in California, that the arts are recognized and valued enough that they are not seen as something that is unnecessary. We need to build that political strength. We need to mobilize. And when there's action alerts that we send out, we hope that you'll be able to take a look at those, because it really does make a difference. They do look at how much response they're receiving to certain legislation, to funding, to budgets, etc. So when we ask you to do an action alert, please do take a moment to make that happen. We see that quite often, and unfortunately, and right now we see that on the national level with the current, the budget put forth by President Trump includes an elimination of the NEA and NEH. So we have sent out an action alert and asking you please to let your representatives know to continue to support that funding. Oops. Okay, so here we're going to get into a little bit more specifics on ways to engage, and this is really how you can engage during the month of April. So one of the easy things, well, if you're a writer, let's say you're someone who writes eloquently and has a relationship maybe to your local newspaper, and you want to write an op-ed in the month of April, citing April's Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, and again, showing, using data and specifics and storytelling to be able to make your case. It's important that you communicate within your own community on who is writing that op-ed. Maybe contact your local arts council, your commission, sort of the movers and shakers within your own community, and see if they're already doing that. And if not, maybe you want to offer to do that. If someone else has decided that they're going to write that letter, we ask you to then follow up supportive letters to the editor, that you reference that op-ed, and again, you make your own point of how that impact has been made. And we also would love for you, if you get a chance, to write a letter to the governor and to people within, again, your legislators, asking them to vote for the budget increase for arts funding for this year. Okay. Here's how you can also bring Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month to your community. You can make a proclamation for your own counties or cities to designate April as the new Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. We have a template for this on our website and in our Ways to Engage document that you just received, and it links to a template. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible, and that's where you have your relationships with either your city council members, your mayor, your county supervisors, and you bring that to them. We also suggest that during the month of April, you ask your performing arts or public venues to include Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month in their curtain speeches before an event, and say, we are participating, we are pleased to say that this is being recognized by the state legislator as Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. You could also ask them, if you want them to take their cell phones out for a moment, you can ask them to tweet or email or to contact their representatives and let them know that you support arts funding and it should be valued and supported in California. You can piggyback on an existing event. I'm sure a number of you on the call are people who put together arts events in your own community. You can do that easily and participate with us by, on our website, there's a link to submit your event to Californians for the Arts for Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. You'll see some of them already on there. In exchange, all we ask is that you include our logo on your existing events. I know April is just around the corner, so a lot of things have been printed already, and would recognize that maybe you can't do that this year, but if you can put that on your web presence, you can tweet about it, you can share it on social media. That's all we ask this year. We don't want any barriers for people to participate. We'd love for you to be a part of Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. You can also do things like organize visits to your local district offices. Really, this goes back to Sophia's presentation about getting to know your local representatives. During April 11th through 20, the California state legislature is actually in recess. Some of them will be back in their district offices. Some of them might be on actually vacation. But you can certainly try to reach out and say that you're part of Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. You'd like to see them there if you're not coming on April 23rd, for example. And keep your legislators informed and up to date about activities, accomplishments, events that you're doing within your community. That's what Sophia was referencing again in terms of building those relationships. It's not really a one-time-a-year type of activity. This is something you want to do throughout the year. Invite them, tag them when you are doing events. When you've got data to show your arts impact story, maybe you can use the economic calculator that Americans for the Arts provides, for example, and you can tell your story about the number of jobs that the arts and culture and creativity sector are impacting in your community. Make sure your local representatives as well as your state representatives know this. It's also important to find out what are your legislators interested in. Again, we know the wide-ranging impact that arts have, and it's hard to say that there isn't someone who has either a poem or a song or a concert or a play, a dance, and something has made an impact in their lives. Visiting a museum and seeing a work of art in person for the first time after seeing it for so long, in a textbook, or attending their first symphony presentation and being so moved to tears. These are the type of things that we know that the arts make a difference in our empathy and in our way that we can support each other and be better citizens and actually even have civic engagement. So ask your own legislators what interests them. We're finding out that, for example, the Speaker of the House, Anthony Rendon, is actually a huge arts supporter and loves poetry, for example. So find out what gets to them and then maybe reference ways that your own arts programming or what you see on the public funding level is making a difference. And again, as Sophia mentioned earlier, find out what committees your legislators are on. We can certainly help you with that, and we can tell you exactly what committees they sit on. There are committees for the arts in California. We have a House, the Assembly has a committee, and it is the joint, or it's a committee on arts and sports and entertainment. It's a long one. And then the Senate has a committee called the Joint Committee on the Arts. So we'll have that list of who's on those, and maybe your legislators on those committees. All right. We ask you to help spread the word. The more that it's out there, the more it begins to be viral in that good sense of the word, then everyone is on board for Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. And we start to really, see the impact of it when people are starting to say, hey, I hear that April's Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. That's what we want to see. We want to see it valued. We want to see it recognized. So definitely register on our website, either submit an event, tell your own arts impact story, RSVP that you'll be showing up on the 23rd. If you don't have a delegation, you're an individual coming, not a problem. We will put you into a delegation. You will not be attending meetings by yourself. You will always be well prepared, and we'll make it fun and engaging. So we are creating a social media campaign, and that is our main message is that arts create impact. We ask that you also fill in the blank. So it's #ArtsCreate, and then you can say #wellness, #jobs, #community, #joy, whatever you want to say, you can fill in the blank. Arts create California. California is the state of the arts. And again, all of this is also on our website. You can also do things like stage a public action in your own community. We encourage you to go to City Hall, your county office, or other public space to celebrate the arts. Maybe your community loves a parade. You can do one in your community celebrating the impact the arts make. Maybe you want to organize an educational workshop or lecture to educate your community on the arts impact, or maybe you want to recognize your local legislator. Has there been somebody in your community that has made a huge difference and you want to make sure that they've been recognized? Again, you can share your arts impact story, your own, and we will have examples of those. I think we have maybe a couple already on the website, but simply you can even do your own selfie narrative video talking about how it makes a difference. Or maybe there's someone who's been through a program that's been a beneficiary of those programs, and you want them to tell those stories. So go ahead and submit your arts impact stories. We'll use those in social media, and you can also come on April 23rd, and do that as well. Oh, that my mouse pad got very active right there. So I see we're going to get to some questions in a second, but I'm going to switch back to Sophia, and she's going to give you some basics of your delegate visit should you be joining us. But this is great advice anytime you want to go meet with an official. So take it away, Sophia.
Perfect. And I'm going to actually go backwards for 2 seconds. There were 2 other things that I wanted to mention to add on to the remarkable amount of information you just got from Julie that is so exceptional. In LA County, we've been doing Arts Month. Oh, you don't have to go back on the slide.
Okay.
We've been doing Arts Month for the past 2 years. And as an example of how other local communities are responding, my earbuds are starting to go. That's a kind of funny time to have it go.
Nope. We lost you. Are you there, Sophia?
Hold on. Are you there?
Yeah.
Here. Okay. Sorry about that. I figured something was going to happen mid presentation. I'm so glad that it was towards the end. In Los Angeles County, this is the 2nd year. This will actually be the 3rd year that it's been an entire month. And it's super nice to see local communities figure out how they want to do this themselves. In Santa Clarita, last year they did an arts run, and it was a 5K and a 10K, and along the race route were different performers and music happening. And it was really extraordinary to have the arts along with a physical activity in a beautiful space of the mountains and the desert. And all of the tents, instead of being sports related, were actually arts and culture related. And so as we think of ideas, whatever is right for your community is a great way to start to broaden out how you talk about who cares about and loves the arts and culture, because it's going to be your neighbors and friends in very different ways. Okay, now back to where we are talking about. We are looking at the basis of a delegate visit. I think it's very important to say that the delegate visit is related to the policy agenda. It's very hard to uncouple that. One of the first things that you'll see here, prepare in advance, do your research, know who you're visiting. If you're one of the lucky few who has decided that they're going to do a field office visit during the recess, this is a time to find out which of the staffers are going to be back in Sacramento when we are there on the 23rd, so that you have a personal relationship walking into that office. And so that's the little tiny details that make a huge difference, so that when you walk in, you're just slightly better informed. You're slightly more connected. You have a pre-existing relationship, and it doesn't need to be based on a whole lot. It's just that you've already talked to them and know them face to face in some way. Practicing the story based on what Julie was talking about. Now, she went through an 8-point policy agenda with very detailed information about the $10 million governor's budget, the support for programs to provide for well-rounded early childhood resources. Those are going to be available. You'll have all that information. Don't worry about the language of the policy agenda itself. What you do want to practice in advance is, inside those big areas, and it's on the website, so you can always download it right now, but inside those big areas, you're going to want to prompt yourself to think about, what unique perspective are you bringing as a resident or an artist or an arts organization or administrator, inside that district? And what is it that you bring, and how do you enter the world and experience arts and culture that is meaningful to the place where you are? I would say then also, as a prompt, what's a significant experience you've had with arts and culture in this district, the district where you reside or where your organization is, that you can share? And or how have you seen lives affected and improved by arts and culture in this district? And you're going to notice that in each of those 3 prompts, I'm asking you to think really locally about impact with the local community in that district, that voting district. Many of us don't always think about the political lines of where this district lies. And so if you don't, and there's no shame here, if you don't know specifically the boundary lines of the congressional or assembly district, senatorial district for the state where you are going to be advocating, there are links so that you can find out where you are. And I think we have those links on our website as well. And if we don't have them directly, they will be there by the end of today, so that you can do a lookup and see the boundary and really make sure that you're making the case in that local sense. That's very powerful when you do any kind of delegate visit. You're going to want to make sure that you do download the policy agenda so you know it and you feel comfortable with it. And if there's many of you walking in, between any more than 2, honestly, but even when it's just a couple of you, you're going to want to know before you walk into that office, who's going to be talking about what. Some of you are going to be arts education experts, and that's really, you should focus on that. Some of you know museums better than anyone else in your group. Some of you have been working with veterans, and that's going to be really important to talk about. And each of you will have some area of expertise or powerful relationship that you should be the advocate of that message. What you don't want to do, especially when we're doing these visits that are statewide around the statewide policy agenda, this is not the time to make any direct requests for supports for yourself or your organization, or follow up on a personal conversation for that support that you've had previously. And that's that line. You want to have the pre-existing relationship, But in this delegation, you are not referencing whatever that conversation was that you've had previously, because this day is going to be about the statewide agenda and us being united in our ask. We do not want to look like we are divided. The other thing that are just basics, and this is kind of the walking into a space, you're going to want to start out this conversation with asking them how much time they have for this conversation. Julie mentioned earlier, it's very likely that you're going to be meeting with staff. And that I find is brilliant. I have to tell you, I have been doing this for many, 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 many years, and the staffers move from office to office. And so if you have a relationship with the chief of staff in one office, or the deputy who's responsible for arts and culture, they frequently in a few years will be moving to someone else's. They'll already know you. You have that relationship. You send them the updated information, and suddenly you are able to get a meeting more quickly with that legislator than if you hadn't. So staffers, don't underestimate the power of the staff. You're going to want to focus on the local. I already said that. Share your arts impact story. Focus on the agenda, and ask them about what their connection to art has been. What is their story? Or what's the thing they're most passionate about? And then you can make that connection for them. Again, when we are most successful is when the policymakers themselves become the advocates. So anything we can do to connect them with things that already resonate is the ideal. If there's a call to action, in this case, we're trying to get them to support either the budget or a bill that's going forward, the museum grant program, whatever that is, you want to get that, you need to make that call to action. This is what we're looking for from you. This is the lobbying part. And that you are going to get their commitment to support or at least look into those specific bills. Everything up until that point is advocacy and education. That very last moment, if you're bringing up a specific bill, is going to be the lobbying moment. And you have every right to both advocate and lobby to your elected representatives.
Thank you so much, Sophia. That was terrific. And so we're doing well here on time, and we want to ask if anyone on the call has any specific questions that you'd like to ask now. You can type those in, and we've had a couple that we've already addressed privately, but we'll share those with you. Somebody asked, where is the template for the proclamation? And it is actually on the Ways to Engage guide, and it is in the number 3, Bring Arts and Culture and Creativity Month to Your Community. And it's the first bullet, advocate in your county by designating April as the new Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month. And you'll see a hyperlink, and that will take you to the proclamation. Another question was, is the visit, are you expecting us to cover all of the talking points on the policy agenda? And as Sophia said, no, we're not. I mean, we'd love for you to identify before you go in who says what. So that if arts ed is your thing, you're going to talk more about arts education. Somebody should be designated to talk about the budget and the $10 million. Somebody should be designated to speak about the museum grant bill. Somebody should funding. Somebody should be designated to speak about youth poet laureate. If you don't get to all of them, that's okay too. You can say there's more, and we'd like to share this with you, and you give them the leave behind that we will be giving to you, and we will also be emailing those to every office as well, so that they'll have lots of access to information. Yes, we can share the prompts via follow-up materials, the ones that Sophia just outlined. We'd be happy to send those as well. Are there other questions? Okay, let's see. Go ahead, click on that one. We are a statewide organization serving our members. Do we focus on asks on a local level based on where we are headquartered or statewide? I think, again, we are statewide. So, I mean, we are, I think, I guess you should provide for us what it is that the statewide ask is. You can certainly when you're speaking directly to representatives that are within a community, you can talk about what you're doing there generally. But so Sophia, do you have an answer to that as well?
Yeah, so I would say the big thing that you want to do when you're, especially around localized issues, is if they're related back to any one of the policy agenda areas, is to say how that policy agenda that we're talking about comes back locally, and that when the state takes action, it can be leveraged at the local level, and it will impact this very localized program in pretty important ways. Usually there's a way that you can leverage funding or leverage an expansion of programming or an expansion of impact. And you tend to know that better than I do, especially when I'm talking in generalities. But I would say hook back up into it. It's this, again, you're going to do this balance of what's happening in your district particularly, and then why do you need this statewide support so that it will go back into this district.
Thank you. Somebody asked if they're specifically from a region, is there an arts delegation coming from that region? And in this case, San Jose. Yes, there is. A captain is Ron Muriera, who's on our board. And I believe he's actually an arts commissioner with you. So just go ahead. The best way for us to assign you to a delegation, and you will be assigned, is to RSVP on our website, and then we will put you with the delegation from your community. Let me just see what else. Yes. Will you be notified of our assigned teams in enough time to rehearse with our teammates? We'll do our best to get that information to you. It's a pretty big undertaking, and that's why we really need people to register sooner rather than later. So if you're talking to other folks in your community that are interested in and they think they're going to show up on the 23rd, please have them register so that we can start putting you together. If you're local, you can certainly get together within your own community. There will be time also in the morning before you make those visits to meet your delegation and to do that. And I'll tell you, a lot of times that's done right in the hallways right before you go in, and that's totally fine. If you've never done it before, there might be you might feel like this is a little intimidating, or some people have some fear around this. And I can tell you, as soon as you've been through that first meeting where you introduce yourself and you tell your story and you get through those points, you'll feel great. It's actually a really wonderful experience, and I'll tell you that one of the things I've experienced is, and in particular, it's really nice to know, which is that the arts are primarily a bipartisan issue. So most of the time you're going to get some pretty positive responses from the folks you're meeting with, but definitely you'll get some time in the morning to rehearse. Will there be meetings set up with key chairs of key committees in addition to meeting with senators and assembly members by district? Yes, there will be, and yes, you can make that request if you'd like to be in any of those particular meetings. Again, it might be the staffer to those, but you certainly can make that request. Oh, good. And then somebody said hotel rooms are booking fast. That's true. We actually have a link on our website to the Hyatt, which is right across the street from the Capitol. And the rate we got is $179. It's only, unfortunately, for the night of April 22nd. April 23rd, this person is correct, is really booked up in Sacramento. So if you think you're going to come up and want to be there first thing in the morning at 9 a.m. for our rally outside, and we hope you will be there with strength in numbers, I would suggest if you're coming from out of town. Somebody said that the Hyatt discount is full. I just got a report this morning from the Hyatt that there were 6 rooms still available. So we'll double check on that, and we'll send a follow-up link. Unless, since we started this call, 6 people booked their rooms, there were 6 rooms still available. But thanks for that. I think we got through everyone's questions. Are there any other questions at this time? Well, terrific. We so appreciate everyone's time today. This is our poster for Arts Advocacy Day. You received that as a handout. We would really appreciate it if you would share this on socials, and if you can, print it out as well. and put it up in your community. We can also send you a native file if you want to customize it in any way to say, for example, you run an organization that's not a sponsor, but you want to say you're supporting it, that you're welcome to also do that. We are still looking for sponsors. This is a big deal to put this together. We are a nonprofit, scrappy nonprofit organization. If you see that this is of value and you want to sponsor it or personally support it, we do, of course, accept donations on our website. We have some great resources. These are hyperlinked on the website, Americans for the Arts, the California Arts Council, and so on. And again, if you want drill down information by district, we can also help get you that information. And these are the folks that have made Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month possible thus far. We're really grateful to them for their support as well as their partnerships. And finally, we want you to know about Create California has also a public will campaign that's specifically to arts ed. So we encourage you to go to createcalifornia.org and check out some of their materials. They will be there participating as well on Advocacy Day. And so you can get lots of swag and good things there. Oops. And then finally, if you have any questions, my email is membership@californiansforthearts.org, and I'm Julie Baker, the Executive Director. For our fabulous project manager who's sitting silently next to me, who put all of this together, her name is Whitney Keir, and she is at ACCM@californiansforthearts.org. And if you have specific questions to Sophia, please go ahead and send them to me, membership@, and I'll be sure to get her response for those as well. So we
talk all the time.
Yes, and we talk all the time. It's so true. Well, we so appreciate everyone attending today. We hope that you found this valuable and that you'll be joining us in April for the full month of activities, as well as Advocacy Day on April 23rd. And please contact us should you have any questions, suggestions, or anything we can do to make this an exciting and engaging month for us all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.